Allow your breath to soften, your chest to release, your shoulders to relax, your neck to fall upward. Your legs, of course, nice and soft. With every exhalation, your whole system softens a bit further. With every inhalation, allowing a kind of stillness to deepen in your body-mind. Softer and softer. Just a few more minutes of releasing. If your mind wanders away, remember not to force it back, but instead to practice letting go of the distraction. Just see the distraction as pointless, useless. Don't push it away. You just lose interest and let your mind fall back into the present moment. Sometimes just by noticing that you're imagining things, that's enough to make you look at what you're imagining and just lose interest, and your mind just naturally settles back. That natural release back toward the center, that's what you want. Not pushing it, not pulling on it. It's the same with the breath. We want to breathe, and at the same time, we want the breath to be uninhibited, to move on its own. And we just release that which is obstructing it. Not sure if it comes through or not, but we're having a lovely snowfall again right now. Slowly covering the mountainside. And in the same way that when the snow falls, the mountain becomes quiet. There's this sense of on the mountain. You can feel that in your body. As everything settles, softens, as though you're a mountain and the snow is falling on you. Keep that level of stillness as we continue. Make sure that your hands are warm before beginning. Just from that seated practice, my hands got really hot. So it's really nice to do these practices. Gentle circles, soft, Comfortable, opening the top of the head without pressure. Ooh, lots of snow. As you practice, allow some aspect of your awareness to rest in your dantian, behind the navel, in front of the spine.
Is that to maintain a sense of balance?
Mm-hmm. With all of our practices, we want that very small sense of awareness, like the hand on the piece of paper. Always a little bit of awareness, so the chi is always going in there, and it creates an anchor point, a grounding point for everything we do.
Del just joined.
Oh, welcome, Del. Glad you made it.
Hello.
He's down where it's warmer in California. Emphasizing today some awareness, resting, at least in your navel or in your Mingmen, opposite the navel. Best of all is in the space in between. Whatever we do, we want some aspect of our awareness resting in our center, cultivating it, always retaining and storing a bit more than we use. Too many Qigong systems are entirely based on using and expending our Qi and our essence. What we want to do instead is to conserve and allow things to flow inward more than they flow out. Beautiful. Usually the eagles are out hunting in this weather.
Del says, loving your shirt as always. If you ever decide to donate clothes to the poor, please consider me as a top candidate, sir.
I am definitely among the poor. But I am rich in t-shirts, that is true. Yeah, it's really fun when you get to learn to make your own. This came from the school, the Daoist Studies Institute. But most of them I make just because it's fun. Love spinning on this thing.
It looks really fun.
Okay. Special Qigong technique.
When we do the ear pressing movement, should I be trying to get that feeling like I'm plunging the toilet, or what is the feeling there? Is the question.
That plunging in the toilet is the worst possible metaphor, but probably accurate. I guess it depends on what you keep in between your ears. But you want to make sure that you're not pushing too hard, but that's the right idea. There's that sense of pressurization that reaches gently into your ears and works the space in there. That's a very healing process, but definitely don't do it too hard. Do you want to try sitting on this? We can trade.
Oh, that's okay. Thank you.
Again, letting your awareness drop down to the Dantian. Cultivating that space as a primary point. As it develops and warms, not only is it very good for your health, but it also helps to anchor your mind, to quiet your emotions. It has a profound impact when you develop it. It also strongly softens the body and gives you a place to put your awareness as you do any physical movement. Later, once all of your 18 pivots have opened and your body is soft, if you do a practice like Taiji to cultivate it, the rotational Dantian starts to move like a ball. And every single movement that you make allows this to take part and guide that movement. And so there's always some awareness here. And so just by moving, you start to cultivate qi here more and more. And your whole body becomes soft and connected. Your emotions become much more peaceful. Your mind has a place to rest. Very powerful practice. So always take the time and always a little bit of awareness here as we cultivate. Gently increasing the number of repetitions in each position, as long as it's comfortable.
We have another couple questions here. What kind of awareness should I hold in the chi point, and does it have any significance in internal alchemy, or better to solely focus on the LD behind belly button as primary center point?
Good question. Let's come back to that toward the end because I want to give the long answer. In this case, for this set, use the place in the lower dantian. In this set, we call it the middle dantian. The lower dantian is down lower. Every set uses different terminology, but in this case, we use the Daoist point behind the navel in front of the Mingmen, right in the very center of the body. Not the C of Chi point, the Ren 6 point, which is a few inches lower. For Chris, who's been studying acupuncture, C of Chi is the name of the point down below. Gentle warming circles. Again, you're not trying to massage the muscle, you're trying to melt the fascia on top and around and between. Don't do anything that makes your body push back. Emphasizing this movement that releases down toward the fingertips. Long 5. Pericardium 6, triple warmer 5, the inner and outer gates. Relieving pressure, softening. Large intestine 4. "36 times in both directions, or more if you like. If you tend to have clogged ears, there's a very useful point between the 4th and 5th knuckle. If you make a triangle onto the hand between the tendons, we can do that one as well. Gently stimulating that point. Same thing, we're not trying to press into them, we're simply trying to stimulate them from the outside, softening the fascia and allowing the warmth and the intent to sink deep. And the intent, of course, is this unwavering, unconditional friendliness, kindness, gentle love and approbation. Also the base of the thumb. Just to help prevent one of the most common places of discomfort in the human body. Softening the shoulders nest, this whole area below the collarbone in this V. Lung 1, lung 2, the extra points. There's some fun liver points in this area. Releasing this whole line. Warming and softening both directions. You can also ease around the breast tissue if you have any that you would like to work on. We all have breast tissue, we just have more or less than others. Reaching into heart 1, gently softening that space, not poking at it. Easing this line under here. If this is difficult for you, as I've heard for a number of you it is, you can feel free to use your other hand to push on your elbow, which might help to soften. Eventually, when your shoulders are soft, your shoulder blade will descend several inches down your back and make it very easy to reach up. But until then, feel free to use your body however you need to. Warming and softening the whole body. Some awareness, again, as a reminder, down here. When I was working on my ears earlier, I noticed that it took a lot longer than usual for the sense of heat to come pouring back out. And so I kept going with the movements until now my ears feel nice and warm. And it's the same anywhere in your body. If you're noticing, as I just did, oh, behind my elbow, it's a little extra cold. I must have been outside for too long in the snow. I'll just spend a little extra time relieving that, becoming aware of that, and then I move on.
I have a really good question here. Are breathing techniques at their core anti-Daoist? Like, I understand breathing techniques help us to retrain our breath, but at some point, are we dispensed with the quote reverse breath or mountain breath?
Another very good question. It actually relates to the Daoist question earlier, and so we'll save it all for one big discussion. A quickie answer, which I always am loath to give a quickie answer, is we want to allow the breath to completely return to being natural. Always. Always unforced. That Daoist term, Dao Fa Zi Ren, which is this idea of the Dao, the technique of the Dao, the way of the Dao, of everything, is natural. It's automatic. It's Zi Ren, it's self-so. It happens on its own. And so anytime that we're doing stuff, then we're in the way. And we want to return to a space where we're allowing. And so techniques like reverse breath or other things can result from proper practice. But as a result, it is not a thing that you do. It is a big mistake. Same with things like microcosmic orbit and other methods. It's a big misunderstanding. They're often prohibited in Daoist practices, but they're being sold in books inappropriately. These are things that should result from proper practice. They are not the practice. Similar to that question about keeping your body warm. Your body learns to thermally self-regulate and be warm or cool when it needs to be, but that is not the practice. Otherwise, it encourages things like craving and attachment and power hungry, and it charges up the emotions, it charges up the mind. And those are all fundamentally non-Taoist.
He says, thank you. I was having a Daoist debate today on Instagram, and some guy who wrote his own version of the Tao was saying that breathing techniques are Daoist and do not cause strain. Thank you for clarifying.
I love the idea of a Daoist debate. One of those wonderful, what's the term? Oxymoron, where you self-canceling terms. Yeah. I should also add that there are a number of schools of Taoism. They don't all agree. There are certain principles upon which we all agree, like Ren, the new way of the Tao is natural. But there are a lot of variations of thoughts, and so I don't mean to sound like the authority. This is just the school that we study in here. I studied the Longmen tradition with the Daoist Master. A number of the people who write the books that sell these techniques, they were rejected by my teacher's teachers. I've heard all kinds of stories about them. And so they wrote the books anyway. So please be careful where you get your information, especially if it's on Facebook or something. Or even random guys on YouTube. Best thing I can do is to recommend to go and train with a Daoist master in person. Things that you have to learn through what we call transmission. The stuff that can't be taught. That can only be caught with a C.
I can't help it.
That's good. This poor finger. This is the finger I cut off, and so I'm always giving it love.
Is it colder than the others?
It used to be before I practiced. Now it's always warm, but because I think I take care of it. It used to have this big buildup of scar tissue, and I couldn't bend it at all. I still can't bend the tip because the tendon is cut, but it's attached, and it has circulation, and I'm not complaining. I can play the octave on the piano, and that's all that matters. And then shaking out.
You wouldn't happen to remember the specific chapters in Tao Te Ching, would you?
For which?
You know, the response, he was pulling for chapter 50, I believe in the Tao, saying Lao Tzu's teaching clearly prohibits against breathing techniques. Thank you again.
And not to be that guy. I hate being that guy. Thank you for the applause, by the way. I take it. That it is very difficult to find any kind of good translation of the Tao Te Ching. It is very worth looking at the original Chinese if you can. When my teacher first said that, I kind of went, oh. And now I have to totally agree. Because now that I've translated it and retranslated it for years and years, I read the translations, and very few actually say anything close to what's in the Tao Te Ching. And so it's worth reading commentaries that are famous. I was telling Chris, my favorite translation so far actually comes from the science fiction writer Ursula K. Le Guin. It's just wonderful. But even that, the English doesn't capture all the double meanings and layers of things. And so, yeah, if you're going to study it, again, study with a master in person if you can, and learn Chinese. Sorry.
What was it? Your Chinese says the pretty translations aren't accurate, and the accurate translations aren't pretty.
That's
pretty
right.
Meaning that they flow and they seem to make intuitive sense.
Mm-hmm.
Because
Yeah.
of the layers that you're talking about.
That's in the Tao Te Ching, actually. The beautiful isn't true, and the true isn't beautiful. at least in the way that we think of it with translations. Yeah, one of his students, a guy who translates under the name of Red Pine, Bill Douglas, he made a copy of the Tao Te Ching, which was is very beautiful and poetic. And it may be my favorite poetic translation. And he includes all of these quotes and commentary to make sure you understand it. But it's not very accurate, and so it's really hard to read. But he's got another good one by Red Pine, if you look it up. Closing. Again, nurturing this space in the center, letting your awareness sink into your body.
We have another question. Do you consider the Tao Te Ching a book on alchemy?
Yeah, the Tao Te Ching, a number of these classic texts, a lot of the ones labeled Jing, they can be translated as texts that guide rulers toward government, guide people toward good family life. But if you have the translations, and there are private, secret transmissions in each Taoist lineage, even this Dragon's Gate lineage, where the way you pronounce a word, the way the character looks is different. And it provides a slightly different meaning. And there's a whole host of characters that can't be typed on the typing board because they're not part of the recognized Chinese, what's the word, lexicography collection. And so it has to be written by hand, or you have to see it somewhere else, and it has a different meaning. And so it's pretty interesting. It has a lot of layers. The same for books like Journey to the West, the Monkey King shirt I was wearing, and some others. Let's start through here. Solar plexus. We're in 14, 15. Warming, softening. Remember how important the appropriate intention is here. What is the counter to retained anger and frustration? What is that which releases it? We're in 12. So pretty. Mm-hmm. allowing your awareness to penetrate into your body. One of the great healing potentials of this method is to allow your awareness to sink inside. And Chris, you and I were talking about the various energetic protecting practices, and this is one of them. Centering and sealing, your awareness sinking deep, anchoring.
We have a question. Do you also train weapons? I see that lovely saber behind you.
This is a straight sword. Saber is the curved blade. This is a Japanese jin. Saber is called the Daoist. And yes, and staff here, and spear, and other various weapons.
It says, dude, share footage, please.
No way. But if you join us on New Year's, the 10th, is it the 10th? That's Saturday night, online. You'll probably get to see my instructor do the straight sword. He is, in my opinion, he is easily one of the very best in the world at this particular weapon. It's one of the reasons I love studying with him, because that's my favorite as well. Remember to keep your hands soft, your wrists relaxed. Everything is easy. And that's a lot of what you're communicating. You're communicating that warmth and ease. If you start to tighten up, that starts to spread through your whole body and mind. Feels good. My body's getting all warm. Mel is reminding me that this two-handed thing may be uncomfortable, so you can feel free to use one hand at a time. If that helps you warm, whatever it is that feels most comfortable. Everyone's body is different, and so you want to listen to yours and do whatever it is that feels the most nourishing, except for the principle, this nourishing principle. That's why if you get a group of Taoists into a room, everybody's practicing slightly differently, and that's natural. The main skill of a Taoist is the ability to listen deeply to their body, to the environment, to other people. And the main method that develops the ability to listen is stillness. Cultivating stillness is the primary skill. It's the way. This is the way. Warming and nourishing, stomach 36.
So we have another question. What would a Taoist say to the statement, quote, "We live in a simulation"? And he says you can answer at the end of the class if that's easier.
We live in a simulation. I keep waiting for a strange joke. So a Taoist, a 6-foot rabbit, and Elon Musk walk into a bar. Gallbladder 34. I'm hitting spleen 9 along with it. Very nice. Feels good. Oh, skipping. Excuse me. Nice socks.
Thank you. Awesome sock club.
Awesome sock club. Reminds me of the Qun hexagram, the hiding your gold beneath your clothes. Qun. Earth.
Earth. Hiding the gold beneath your clothes. Oh, right.
Mhm.
Yes, the lower your garment.
That's right. It's this traditional idea that, well, it means a lot of things, but even if you have riches, if you have things of great value or skills of great value, like your socks, you hide them, you keep them to yourself, you don't show them off. If you have them, you wear them, you keep them, but you hide them under your normal clothes so you don't stand out. Very good wisdom. So Melanie's socks reminded me of that.
They're pink, but close enough to yellow.
Close enough to yellow.
Joe says he loves that wisdom.
Yeah, it's very, the I Ching, the Book of Changes, is just this amazing collection of wisdom. I know most people use it as a fortune-telling device, but just as a collection of very important tidbits of wisdom. Like if you were to gather a council of elders together and be like, teach me what to do in all the situations of life. You know, they get together and they talk about, okay, when you're starting something new, here's the most important things to keep in mind. How about during the difficult time, or that moment just before the difficult time that you know is coming? Then they say, okay, well, here's a collection of wisdom from millennia of sages giving suggestions about how to handle it. It's just amazing.
Would you say that it helps you to recognize patterns?
I think so. Yeah, the Li. There's this idea in Chinese traditional Daoism that the Li, the patterns of the world, that everything relates to everything else. And you learn how to recognize those patterns.
Another question. What's some of your favorite wisdom you've gathered from Zhuangzi?
Zhuangzi.
Zhuangzi. He's
Yeah.
so different from all the other Taoists in thought, it seems.
He's one of the two main guys in popular Taoism, Lao Tzu and Zhuangzi. I don't know, I like his ugly tree. Speaking of hiding your values, right?
The stink tree.
The stink tree.
Nobody chops it down.
Or the Zhuangzi, you should come, become my chief minister at court. I'll make you rich. Zhuangzi says, see that turtle over there? If you kept it in a box, which would it prefer? Would it be in a box in the palace surrounded by gold? Or would it prefer to be here at the lake dragging its tail in the mud? So true. People chase things for their whole lives and never appreciate something that happens for free. Zhuangzi was awesome.
There's another story of him fishing and somebody comes by and maybe it's the same story. They make him an offer to become really wealthy. And he's like, I've already got enough, but you could have 100 fish.
That's right.
Well, what would I do with 100 fish?
That's right. Then you'd sell it. Well, what did I do when I sold it? Well, then you could hire other people and you could create an industry. And one day you could be so wealthy that you could retire. And then what? Well, then you can come here and fish by the bank again. So ridiculous. I wish we teach that kind of thing to people in school. Instead, we just spend our lives chasing other people's tails. And then we look around at all the wealthy, powerful people and we see how unhappy they all are. It's like, maybe there's something wrong here. So even here, as I warm my ankle, and my ankle's feeling a little colder than before, so I'll spend extra time here. And probably from, again, standing out in the snow for too long today. So I just put a little extra time in until my body finds balance, but I have to learn to listen. And I also want to have some quality of awareness here in the middle, in your dantian. Let things warm, let things settle. Let that be your chief practice. Nourishing, warming, settling. Again, this point here, liver 3 on top. Very useful for softening and harmonizing the body, moving the chi. Oh. How do your feet feel over there?
They are also really cool, so this is wonderful. This is one of my favorites.
Working your feet.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Speaking of the Tao Te Ching, by the way, that's where Melanie and I met. How many years ago? Like 7 or something?
2018.
whatever that is.
6 years, yeah.
6 years.
Yeah.
That's right. 6 years ago, in the Dao De Jing class, we've been translating and retranslating the Dao De Jing ever since we go through it. Start over again, go through it over and over again. So there's a lot to be learned from these classic texts. We're hoping to get Master ZhiCheng to start teaching it. We've been doing it with a Chinese expert once a week for years. Because classical Chinese requires a very different eye. Modern Chinese speakers won't understand it either. A lot of the friends that grew up in Beijing and in China, Shanghai, they can't understand what it says. So you have to learn to read ancient Chinese, and he can do it. But he's not a Daoist master. And so it'll be neat to have ZhiCheng lead a class. And if he does, I'll let everybody know, because you might be able to join online, although it's kind of doubtful. ZhiCheng tends to teach that kind of stuff only in person. But we do have retreats up here constantly if you want to join. That's this place. Go to this website. .org. Yeah, if you just search for it, you find it. And I have it on every single link that I put up. I always try to push Master ZhiCheng to everybody because he deserves the support. Because he doesn't advertise for himself. He's the good invisible Taoist. And so only people who already know Taoism, like other martial arts masters and Daoist masters, they come to study with him. But unless you already know, you can't find him.
We have another question. May I ask you a meditation question or save for the end of class?
You can ask it and then we'll answer it or save it now.
And realize we've moved on to the next leg.
You can stay on your leg as long as you want. Feels good. Oh, you didn't hear me move on because I didn't do this.
That was it.
I left it out.
That's my bookmark.
That's the bookmark. I'll do it on the other side just to balance it out. Yes.
Okay, so the question is, it's in regards to feeling almost like numinous presence when in deep meditation or stillness. How does one respond to the fear that comes with this? I feel vulnerable when the feelings come.
We'll save it to the end.
It's a very good question.
Yeah. In a way, it's one of the easier ones to answer, though. Again, only create these movements in ways that soften your body. So the way I'm sitting in the chair, I'm creating this movement. I'm softening my hips. My back stays straight and comfortable the whole time. I'm not rounding forward at all. I'm just leaning from my hips. My breath is comfortable. My neck is comfortable. And then I straighten from my hips. So I'm not gripping my back at all. Find a way to soften your hips. Relax your belly. So there's no pressure. You can hear that there's no pressure in my voice as I go down. It's just a comfortable lean, like one of those old drinking birds that just hinges, softening down the outside and back, releasing up the inside and front. Circles. I have to do it this way because this chair comes with a saddle.
That'll be the thumbnail.
This is the thumbnail.
Yeah, that's it.
Oh God, that's true. YouTube's algorithm these days can pick the thumbnail for you, and often it's a very awkward thing that it chooses. Make sure that your feet are circling, your toes move, as well as, I'm going to do this with my hands so you can see the movement. Try to put them in a spot you can see them here. If I go this way and this way with my toes, and as many of you find out, this can cause cramping. So please stop before the cramping happens. Give yourself a break. We're simply strengthening and opening our feet. Feels nice. And then turn it. Softening your waist. Notice if you're twisting your chest, your nose, your sternum, and your navel should stay in a line. And you turn your navel so that they're not twisting away from each other. You're turning your waist, not your hips. You may see my knees moving just because I'm on this stool, but you want this quality of movement traveling across the waist this way. Slowly returning. Yeah, staying warm if you're chilly. Let's do a closing movement. Again, your awareness sinks deep inside. When inevitably your mind bounces out, don't pull it back. Let go of the mind, soften the mind. It is tension that causes your mind to jump around. Soften your mind into the present moment so it rests in the moment, in this Dantian space effortlessly. If you're expending energy, then you've gone the wrong way. Every time you drink liquid, you can follow that movement of liquid all the way down to that space behind the navel. The chi that sinks. Moving into the teeth, tongue series. Again, as a reminder, tapping your teeth. Let's try tapping our teeth this time 60 times. And You want to have even pressure across your teeth. You know, you can move your jaw around to make sure all the teeth connect as best that you can. If you have a lot of jaw tension, you might not make that connection. And it is actually okay to put something between your teeth to help put a little pressure on the teeth that don't get touched. That's okay. Tapping the teeth and then lengthening the tongue, clicking the tongue, lengthening the tongue. Don't tighten your throat. Simply lengthen your tongue from the root as best you can while softening this area, opening your eyes wide. And then we will circle the tongue on the outside of the gums, base of the teeth, 9 times both directions, and then on the inside, and then gather the saliva. If you'd like, you can divide that saliva into 3 parts, if there's enough of it, and swallow it down 3 times, each time following it to your dancing. This is a foundational Daoist practice. It's very nourishing for the dancing.
Should we roll our eyes too?
Letting your awareness accumulate in the dantian, settling into that space behind the navel. Wherever your awareness gathers and accumulates, quietly, the chi gathers. We want to gather the chi in the center of the body. This point we talk about behind the navel is called the alchemical vessel. It's an open, empty space within which we can gather together the 3 treasures, the Jing, Qi, and Shen. Everything collects. Listening to that space, thinking about that space, feeling that space as though you're looking at it. Just a few minutes of this settled awareness of your Danxian. When your mind inevitably wanders off, just let it come back and settle again. Like a bird nestling into its nest. Get your hands nice and warm if they're not already hot. Mine always get really hot from that practice. And then hands resting on the eyes. Ironing off to the side, over the top of your head, down the back of your neck, of your shoulders, pulling down, sinking chi down the front of your body, down the front of your legs, along the stomach and liver channel, off between your big toe and your second toe. A quick way of closing. I wanted to leave space at the end of class for that main cultivated practice. We only did 5 minutes or so, but that seated, settled awareness practice is the main Taoist practice. Stillness, especially in the beginning, cultivating, gathering different qualities of your awareness into one place. I call it San Xin Gui Yi, guiding the three natures into one. And if you can take the time to genuinely settle in a soft way into that space inside you, your whole body collecting around it, letting go, especially after a practice like this massage, your breath being free, your emotions are quiet, that space is the place that the Dancing develops and everything in the world changes. And so it is the primary foundation of practice. And usually it's the thing that people are least likely to do because people don't like to sit still. So let's answer a few of the questions as best I can. And Chris as well, if you have any questions, I can't see what they are, but feel free to ask.
So I'll start with the most recent and then work my way back because we had quite a few. Let's see, in regard to feeling almost like luminous presence when in deep meditation or just stillness, how does one respond to the fear that comes with this? I feel vulnerable when the feelings come.
Mm-hmm. Basically, the part of you that feels vulnerable, the part of you that can be destroyed, damaged, made invisible by stillness itself, that's not you. That's the answer behind it. That which can be destroyed and damaged in you is not you. And so the quality then, if you're sitting still in a stillness deep enough to allow that quiet fullness, that liveliness, that light to arrive, then part of what is feeling threatened is what we talk about as the ego, your identity, that sense of self. That's the part of you that can feel threatened. Your quiet, true nature can't feel threatened. And so that part of you goes, uh-oh, I might vanish or something. I might at least be made unimportant and small. And so it feels threatened. That's the most common cause, at least, of that feeling of fear. And so my counsel for that, often people will say that you should sit through it. What I had to, with my teacher in the system that I had studied under, I was counseled to push through it, to sit there and just be terrified and let the fear overwhelm you and just sit through it until it passes. And now I actually think that that's a bit destructive and you don't need to do that. It's more of like, that's a thing that, because people want to feel their spiritual progress. Oh, I got to feel it. It must be terrifying or otherwise it doesn't count. And I think that that is an incorrect way to think about it, because all we're doing is restoring our true nature. We're not doing anything special in that sense. And so when you start to feel really afraid, just become aware of the fear. Don't fight it. Don't pull on it. Don't try to push into it, because all you want to do is just be quietly awake. And if you need to take a break, do it, because you can't interrupt your awakening process. You just go slowly and gently. It is very common that people wake up too fast. They open their energy system too fast. They release their ego, or their emotions are set free if they've been constrained their whole lives, and suddenly all of this chi dumps into their system and it hits blockages and it causes damage. Again, watch some of my videos that I made about it this last year, and it is common. And it's just because people try to go too fast, too hard. And so just like with everything, my recommendation is Dao Fa Ziren. It happens on its own. And so if you feel the desire to stop, rest into it, If the desire persists, just take a break. Be gentle. Go back to it a little later. You'll make progress anyway, because all you're doing is restoring who you actually are. You're not doing anything. And so you don't need to fight it. The whole Kundalini pressing into things, that's usually a sign of illness, not a sign of awakening. And so please don't try to bring about spiritual experiences, because that usually is a sign of damage that's happened. It should be easy, not hard.
Is the space behind the belly the same space of where the cauldron is? The Sea of Qi is interesting because it does have watery feeling.
Watery what?
Watery feeling.
Feeling. The Sea of Qi point, if we're talking about the same point, below the navel, a few inches inside, down here, Ren 6, that is an okay spot to put your awareness. By putting your awareness there, it tends to pour Qi into your channel system. It's kind of a superficial way to nourish the body. It is certainly a perfectly healthy, fine practice. It can be grounding. I did it for years and years until I learned this newer method. What it can't do is combine essence, Qi, and spirit in the same way to create what Daoists call the medicine. It works differently. And so the space in the middle, this alchemical vessel, what did he call it? The chamber?
The cauldron.
The cauldron, yeah. That's another poetic interpretation of this yuan, this place where we gather Qi. And so that space, that's where you want to let all of these qualities of your mind and body come together. And that creates something special that you can't get if you focus on specific acupoints in those places. The watery feeling is a good feeling. That is, it might be associated with the rotational dantian. So like if somebody pushes on me and I feel it compress my dantian, and I can expand it or rotate it, move people around from this watery hydraulic space, because that's just the quality of our body. We're just filled with liquid. But so I'm not sure what you're feeling precisely. It's not a bad thing to put your awareness there. I wouldn't say don't do it. It's just a different result. And every place that you put your awareness cultivates a slightly different result. This is just this ancient Taoist method. It's the Dragon's Gate system, that the alchemical qualities, that's the system that focuses on internal alchemy and meditation. Other systems focus on the religious side. Other Taoist systems focus on magic or ritual. And everybody has all of these different mountains. Entirely different schools of Taoist thought have different practices. Internal alchemy comes from Longmen, this aspect of this tradition. And so that's the direction that I talk about it from, because that's all that I know.
He says, thank you for explaining that distinction. And then a couple other comments, which I will get to. But first, I wanted to go back to the question.
You're so good.
What would a Taoist say to the statement, quote, "We live in a simulation"?
We live in a simulation. Well. Before you move on to that, because we have a related, I just got one from Chris. Oh, good.
It's a good one, and it's related to what we were just talking about. So Chris says, does that mean putting your focus on your thoughts is the worst thing you can do? Yeah.
Later on in practice, you can put your awareness on your thoughts because you're so well anchored that it doesn't draw your chi up. And so there's a whole practice they call returning, or clarifying, where you can follow your thoughts like deep into emptiness and you can trace them back to where they started and stuff. But for that, to keep it from making your chi rush up or hyper energizing your thoughts, you have to be super rooted and clear and be really good at releasing your mind. And so later on you can do it. But again, there are gradations of practice. There are steps and stages, and you have to do the right practice at the right time. So is that the piece you mentioned? The other one was
the simulation.
The simulation, yeah. So the Taoist. So if I was with my Buddhist teachers, because I grew up with Zen masters and I was studying Buddhism a lot, and my Buddhist teachers might take that simulation idea, not the I'm forgetting the name of the physicist that came up with it. Dyson, I think maybe it was. They came up with the idea that we're living in a large. In fact, mathematically, it's likely that we're living in a simulation. Friedman Dyson. And that's an idea, and it's often taken and used in meditation context. So maybe we'll say a dream instead of a simulation. It really depends. My Buddhist teachers would say that everything is a simulation, in a sense that it's a simulation of the mind. That everything that I'm feeling and experiencing, even the taste of my tea, is really a simulation, an experiment of my mind. And in that way, it's all a simulation, it's all a dream. And it all rests within the field of awareness. And that's the way that the Buddhists would take it. And awareness itself is empty. And I found that it was Buddhism that taught me to be happy, how to rest in deep contentment all the time. But that it was in Taoism, I was unhappy with the way they saw the world, because the world itself was always unreal. It was always separate. It didn't matter because of that dreamlike simulation quality. In Taoism, since your question is about Taoism, it's all part of the same flow. That in a way, maybe it's a better way to say that we are part of the Earth's dream. Like it's not a separation thing. It's not that awareness is real and that's unreal. It's that it's all the same flow. And none of us are real in the way that we think about them being real, because our thoughts aren't real. There is just life, and we are all part of the same chi flow. And so I'm not sure if you're talking about it from that science fiction quality of, aliens running a simulation, or us running a simulation of our past from the future or something like that. A Daoist would just go, I don't know, it doesn't make any difference to my practice. I'm still here learning to be content and relaxed. If I'm a simulation and I have tension in my jaw, it still behooves me to relax my jaw. If you mean simulation in the sense of the dream, like my Buddhist teachers would talk about, then the adjustment would just be that it is all part of the same process. My body, the environment, my community, all of it is the same flow, and nowhere in there is a me. And that's one of the things that we get free of. And so that we remain here, we lose ourselves without getting lost.
Do you clarify what you mean when you say thoughts aren't real?
Would you like to clarify what I mean?
You can probably do it much more succinctly. I guess I would just say, because I notice this tends to, this used to confuse me a lot. The difference between thinking as a kind of movement, like a kinesthetic process in the body-mind, versus the story, which I think is what you're referring to within the thought.
That's right.
If you want to make a distinction, because the process of thinking, I think, is real, right?
Yeah, as far as we know. Yeah, that's right. Thoughts and thinking is real, but the meaning we ascribe to it is something we only ascribe to it. We cannot comprehend the vastness of the universe with our mind, although our thoughts like to tell us that we can. And that's the part that's an illusion, a simulation. But I think you explained it really well. Could everybody hear Melanie? I want to make sure that she's coming through clearly. Melanie is very wise, dedicated to her own meditation practice.
He's just trying to get me to buy dinner. So we have a response. Thank you. Yeah, I was speaking in the mathematical sense that it's like lots of 0.01% chance that we live in base reality or something like that. Does that change how a Daoist sees reality? No, I think it's in the same way that if we say that aliens are real. Oh, aliens, they landed, they're for some reason in Mexico, and those little dolls, those are the real aliens, or they're in New Mexico, or wherever. They're taking over the world, landing in my field of wheat. That can be a really interesting idea. And at the same time, it does not affect my practice, which is to treat my loved ones well, to be present, to nurture my chi, to heal my body, to understand myself as clearly as I can, and to cultivate contentment, to become awake and healthy, a true person. That's what enlightenment is in Taoism, just to be a real person. It doesn't matter what it is, what fantastical idea it is. It can be a cool idea, but it doesn't affect my day-to-day. Let's see, I think we may have covered most, if not all of them.
I usually try to like answer them over time and in the context of what we're doing if I can.
Yeah. The Daoist debate, I think, did we not cover that one?
Oh, about the Tao Te Ching? Yeah.
About the breathing techniques.
I want like a Daoist rap battle.
Oh, you're right. Yeah, we did. Okay. I think that's everything.
Dell came too late to hear me beatboxing and rap battling Chris and Mel. Well, I imagine Chris is quite a good beatboxer.
And Dell is wearing SpongeBob socks.
Excellent. Extra bonus points. The yellow is good for your spleen and stomach chi.
Yellow garments.
Yellow garments underneath your clothes, yeah. Thank you, everybody. And I apologize again if the questions come through. It takes a couple minutes usually for them to come through. But we love you. We appreciate you. For those of you in the future who follow us, thank you for joining. I hope you got to see some of the beautiful snow out here.
Oh, we just got a question I think John's really going to like. Do you like anime?
Do I like anime? I like some anime. I've been using anime to study Spanish because it's easy to find online for various dubs and subtitles. And it's a great way for me to practice my being fluent in Spanish and Chinese by studying an anime. Although anime is often the most difficult to study from because they speak so quickly and everything is a colloquialism or a joke. The jokes are very difficult. And so it's been very good practice for me.
Chris says thank you and see you.
Thank you, Chris. We love you. Thank you for my stool. I think I will keep this stool. I just have to learn how to sit in it more comfortably with my saddle. Rest well.